All right, appears to be live. So another adventure in physics. The new physics, push physics. So I did, this is something I do want to get to eventually in one of these videos, is having a conversation about this fundamental flaw in physics. The versus push versus pull was one of the first choices physics sort of had to make. Is the It's not a push pull universe. It's one or the other. Either the fundament is being pulled together, or the fundament is being pushed together. Push as the mechanism of interaction, and yeah, I'd argue that obviously most theories are dependent on some kind of pull mechanism. And the electric universe people, the Tesla people, apparently that's a sort of related group, um, who think this is an anode cathode issue, some sort of, it wants to go from here to there. It's being pulled there. So light doesn't get to my eye because it got pushed here. Gets to my eye through some other mechanism. Somehow my eye is pulling it. So we're back to some sort of string nonsense, or as some analogize, coaxial cable circuits, some kind of bullshit where, in some instantaneous way, my eyeball pops up in space somewhere and it asks for something to make a connection to my eye, something like that. The Ken guy uses the word instantaneous as if, he doesn't say anything specific, so I can't really nail him on it because he just doesn't say anything specific. But yeah, I mean, if people are going to argue for this instantaneous, please show me something that you think is instantaneously happening. And I think I'll be able to demonstrate you wrong. So anyway, I'll do some comments and we'll see where I go from there. I was thinking I would start an explanation of gravity, and then eventually I'll do another video on episode 14 of the gravity lectures, because they get into some of the equivalency stuff of Einstein's, and it starts talking about redshift, and there's another one of these important kind of breaks in logic, in my opinion, where you can just kind of point out where there are better explanations than the paradoxical one accepted by so many people, physicists and such. Oh, wait a minute. How come I'm live but there's no volume? Probably because I have the speakers off. Okay. Yeah, that's probably the reason, Gary. Okay, there. I was like, turn off that window. All right, now we're rolling. Oh, that's a good plan. Next time I'll leave the speakers off, and I can see when the video starts, and then I don't have to do that wait thing. Well, it's not that big a deal. It's not like you have to wait very long. So anyway. Oh, Lego guy is now Lego girl. Huh. I don't know. It's the same person, but Lego was a troll, so that's a dangerous first name to have, because trolls. I have zero tolerance for trolls, so it's dangerous. But we'll see. As long as you behave. If you can speak English and wish to discuss something in person, you can get into the room. There is a link below. I'm sorry about trolling you. So yeah, so it's Lego guy. Okay, just whatever. Just quit. Just you're starting to troll. Babbling is troll to me. Okay, because I'm really not interested in babble. So just shut up, say something really interesting, or don't say anything at all. So that's sort of the rule. Be interesting, or shut the fuck up. I'm really not here for social blah blah blah. So just quit being weird, or stupid, or queer, or any of that other stuff. And don't be doing any of that Twitter talk to me, Kay. Okay, don't do any of that K stuff. I don't go for that K crap. OK is only 2 letters. You can really handle it. OK. You don't do K. You people are just gotten way too fucking goddamn lazy. All right, so just shut up, or else. Just give me a fair warning. Shut up, or else. I'll shut you up in some manner or another, and then curse you, and maybe cast a spell. I know that probably won't work, but one has to do what one has to do. Yeah. Okay. Enough. Okay. Now you've posted. Oh, this different guy, Oreo. Uriz. Let go of the leg pulling. Let go of the leg pulling. Well, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not going to read comments because you people are not being relevant. Okay. So I'm gonna read comments on videos, which are also stupid, but they're not as stupid as the comments in the live room, which is not saying much. All right, so some guys get SK8PKI, so whatever that means, skate puke, some kind of skate puke. Okay. I'm sorry, but you clearly didn't understand Ken. No, nobody can understand Ken. Ken isn't talking in some sort of rigorous language which you can make any kind of rational conceptions of what he's talking about. I mean, hyperboloid, lack of inertia. I mean, lack of inertia is a nonsensical collection of words by anybody's physics. You just can't do the lack of inertia thing. And be real. Well, he doesn't even, he does that even. He talks about things that have no materiality, no reality. The thing is real, but it's not in the reality of the material reality, or some kind of crap like that. I mean, it's contradiction, it's gobbledygook. It sounds like a new age religion written by people really, really stoned. I mean, where they didn't say anything really coherent. They just started saying things like potato chip yum yum, and they just couldn't do anything rational. I mean, he doesn't articulate anything that can be understood. You have to understand that. Calling light a coaxial cable is not reasonable. You really have to try hard listening to him because he is kind of frustrated. No, he's kind of obnoxious and arrogant. I mean, to call Einstein an imbecile and to do this, I mean, it's way over the top, entirely preposterous. And to say that Tesla had secret knowledge and that we're all so disappointed that we can't find Tesla's secret roadmap to reality because then we could make our big electric gun. I mean, it's just silly. Tesla was a bit of a fucking kook. All right? He spent the last 30 years of his life trying to sell people on his, trying to get money to build a ray gun. But what he is, as is, makes sense. You say it makes sense. It makes no sense. I'm sorry. You certainly can't re-explain it in sensible language, I bet. I bet you can't. How exactly is again, how does light as a wave perpetrate through the media in a straight line? How does it do that without doing what every other kind of wave does, which is spread? And all I can say is, from what I have heard from you about Ken's video at the beginning of your video, clearly shows that you didn't listen to him open. I watched his video. I've played some of his videos in my videos. I'd love to play all of his video, but it's just such a bunch of babble, and he repeats himself every 4 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. It tells the same story over and over and over and over. You see Feynman squirming in his chair. How many fucking times has he referenced the same fucking stories? All right, to him. And you are assuming that he said stuff he never really said. No, I'm not. I would never make up the word hyperboloid. And I certainly wouldn't say something like lack of inertia. This isn't stuff I made up. That's shit that came out of his mouth, retard. You are not destroying any of his observations. Well, I don't know what his observations are, but when he says his ferrocell is bending light, he's an idiot. Clearly, magnetism can't bend light, okay? If you think magnetism can bend light, you're an idiot. Here, because what you think he said is what he said. Two different things. Well, again, you've made accusations and you haven't backed them up with a quote from or any context from any video, a time code, nothing. So you're just making accusations and you're backing them up with nothing. So goodbye to that comment. All right, another comment by the same idiot. All right, go look for Lenz's law. No, I don't need to do that. Clearly you have a good idea of it, but still. Now, where is Lenz's law relevant to what Ken is talking about? Lenz's law just has to do with when you incite, when you create, magnetism travels, it must be induced and it travels at the speed of light, the force. So therefore, okay, when you induce a current, you end up accelerating electrons, you end up creating a reciprocal field, which ends up being kind of like an opposite reaction. And that field essentially fights the field that's creating it. And so the two of them have to find resonance. They have to find a compatibility to grow or to do anything constructive, or else they'll just end up antagonizing each other. So I don't see how that has anything to do with anything Ken's talking about, because he doesn't explain what the fields are. He doesn't explain how they attract and repel. He gives nothing. You people saying something like positives are attracted to negatives. What do you mean? How do they move? What moves them? And Ken shows really weird phenomenon, in which, yes, showing weird phenomenon and explaining it accurately are two different things. So showing the pyramids and then talking about UFOs making them, you know, that one's an interpretation and one's the actual thing. So yes, ferrocells create patterns, okay, of reflected light. Now, where did the reflections come from? Light reflects, okay? They're not the little tubes you're seeing in the ferrocell, the little lines. Those lines aren't creating light. They're reflecting light. That's what the LEDs are producing, is the light. So you have to understand that what you see is reflected light, not emitted light. Anyway, so I mean, you just clearly don't understand. Ken shows really weird phenomena in which the Lenz's law fails to explain. No, he doesn't. He doesn't show anything to do with Lenz's law, which is a, clockwise, counterclockwise. It has to do with the induced current being opposite from the current that induced it. So it's like this kind of rule, okay? If I have two things going clockwise, then they'll end up competing with each other where they meet. But if they're going in opposite directions, then they'll chew into each other or they'll bounce off of each other. That kind of rule. That's all Lenz's law has to do with. Let's see. All right, fails to explain. That's why his observations are whatever than traditional current science. Well, frankly, they're not better. They're not complete in any manner whatsoever. If regular sciences just said silly things like lights like a coaxial cable, just like it, lights, and then he shows drips of water and water splashing, a droplet of water splashing in a puddle, and says, there, it's just like that. Well, if regular science did that, it would be more obviously stupid. I mean, it's stupid, but it's much more rationally stupid in that it doesn't think it can get away with that. Don't hate people. I don't hate people, but the point is your guy is an obnoxiously, he's just totally out of control in the sense that he has no proportionality. I mean, to call Einstein an imbecile is idiotic. He quite obviously wasn't. To call Edison all this, just because anything anti-Tesla. The guy's obviously got Tesla, dick residue up his ass at minimum. This guy has really important stuff for you to learn, really. Well, no, he doesn't. He needs to learn. First, he needs to learn the principle of logic where your explanation has to be comprehensible, and you can't use words in completely inappropriate ways, like saying there's such a thing as a lack of inertia, which is the silliest thing you can say, because you might as well just say it lacks reality. And if you're going to say it lacks reality, then you might as well say you're not doing physics, you're doing mysticism. Magic. So, fuck you. No argument in there anywhere. No argument of anything specific. Again, no quotes, no statement, no anything useful at all. All right, so logical imperialist, who, I should just automatically delete, but he's talking about Numbly Num, so we'll throw it in. Numbly has woken up and has smelled in Mendham's bullshit. Well, clearly, he's been doing this since I've known him, okay? I mean, Numbly Num, it has some sort of compulsion to be an anal, fucktarded asswipe, and to be rude while he does it. And he just can't help himself. So that part he hasn't woken up to. That's what he was from the very fucking beginning, when he was trying to tell me somehow, when he was instructing me, okay, that yeast isn't a bacteria. So somehow it was very important for people to understand that circumcised dicks have less fungus on them. So I should have said they have less fungus on them, and then people would understand better. So it was a lot better to say, yes, if you have a uncircumcised penis, it's covered in fungus. That doesn't sound nearly as bad as saying it's covered in bacteria. Yeah, no, of course, fungus sounds so much better. What a cunt, anyway. In Mendham, physics was nonsense from the start. Well, again, you haven't demonstrated any of that. What it's turned out to be nonsense is every single argument you've made, and all the arguments you haven't made, like the one explaining how Huygens is a principle. Why don't you explain to me how this principle that's only used in one single circumstance, how that's a principle, like Einstein's principle of relativity, right? They're calling that a principle now. Is it like Einstein's principle of relativity, where it doesn't mean anything, it's not real? We don't apply it anywhere except the special circumstances where all our other physics fails? Is that your idea of a principle, cunt? Just because you're not smart enough to get modern physics. No, I'm not stupid enough, okay, to be a liar, okay, to say things are principles when they're only applied in one circumstance. That's not a principle, that's a contrivance, okay? I know the difference between a principle and a fucking contrivance. And when you use something in one circumstance and one circumstance only, merely to make something add up, that's a fucking contrivance. It's not a fucking principle. Just like dark matter isn't anything called a principle, it's a fucking contrivance. And then again, the evidence for lensing. Where's your evidence? Oh yeah, that's right, it doesn't exist, at least as anything hard and substantial. So why don't you defend those things? Defend Huygens, defend Heisenberg even. Defend any one of those contrivances that they've established as principles. You cunt. All right. Modern physics in Mendham doesn't mean that I and others don't understand it. I don't know what that means. You're not smart enough to get modern physics in Mendham doesn't mean that I and others don't understand it. I don't understand what that is. You understand modern physics. Okay. Yes, we understand quantum chromodynamics and general relativity. Too hard for you, question mark? No, too silly for me. Fact. Silly. Why don't you talk about a holographic universe? Why don't you talk about how you're in suspended animation on the edge of the event horizon on the magical black hole? Yeah, what a crock of shit. Doesn't match any rational physics. There's no way you could ever get to that location. But let's just pretend. Yes, light goes fast. Light can't escape the black hole. Somehow it's held back, but somehow the light doesn't go faster when it goes into the black hole. Well, I think that's a conservation problem. So apparently energy can be created and destroyed. No problem. As long as it makes our black hole theories make holograms. Doesn't matter. You are an idiot. No, you're an idiot, a liar, a slanderer, a reckless putz. Okay, you don't have any balls. You have no capacity to make a real argument. You're just a slandering, ad hominem attacking, stone throwing, anonymous coward. Coward, 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 coward. I'm here in a live room, coward. Okay, now if you can show up and make an argument about physics and not attack me personally, why don't you do that, coward? Okay, you are an idiot, and physics advances without your consent. Advances doing absolutely nothing. I mean, just a pile of crap. I'm sure that finding the God particle has saved mankind from so much ignorance and stupidity. Oh my God, it's been so fucking helpful. My quantum computer is in the mail. It's ready to come to my house and do all kinds of quantum computing, phantasmagorical, fun, great stuff. Bullshit. Never going to happen ever. Nanocomputer, maybe. Quantum computer, never happen. So you fuck off, ass wipe. Less than an ass wipe. Your fingers in an ass. All right. So this guy says, this stuff is slowly creeping into my cavernous skull. Yeah, well, some of it's just, like I said, it's almost as obvious as the push-pull thing. You can sort of understand that, yes, conceptually, we have a choice, push, pull. Now, which one is going to win the Occam's razor battle? The push or the pull? Which one is the simpler physical mechanism? Pushing something, bang, I pushed you, or pulling, which requires me to first grab you somehow, hook you, control you, and then somehow pull you. Now, which one sounds simpler? Yes, that's right. Push. All right, numbly numb. Actions don't have to. So, oh yeah, the speed of sound argument. But so, look, I'm sure there's physicists out there who will concede this point. I'm sure that because they can't all be idiots. So the argument is that you'll never find a sound ever created that doesn't have connected to it some action moving faster than the speed of sound. And I've sort of tried to illustrate this, like even with waves, when people put waves in a rope. So if you take a tight rope and you go to put a wave in it, your hand has to move quickly to create a wave that will cascade across the rope. You can't get the wave to roll. So if I move my hand slowly, the rope doesn't wave at all. Nothing happens. I have to do it quickly. I have to exceed the tension of the rope in a sense. I can't allow the rope to dampen the energy, to absorb it. I have to force the energy through it quickly. And I gave analogies of even your skin and how if I push on it, I don't poke a hole. But if I do it quickly, I poke a hole. You can know that with paper. I push on a piece of paper. You know, the paper flexes. It doesn't yield. I do it quickly. There's a hole in the paper. That logic is solid, and that's the same logic that allows waves to propagate in a medium. You must initiate the wave with a violence, okay, that exceeds the speed of transmission. So the speed of you hitting the rope, pushing the rope up to get a wave to propagate in the rope, it has to exceed the transmission speed of the rope. All right. You said sound can only be initiated through the medium by action that has to be faster than the speed of sound. That's right. I've said it for years. And it's the truth, because when you analyze anything that creates a sound, you'll figure it out. Even like speakers, right? Speakers are interesting because they sort of fool you, right? Because you could say, okay, let's analyze the frequencies and let's figure out the amount of movement in the speaker and all this stuff. And know what it turns out to be? Know why those speaker, the fabric of the speaker is so tense? That's why. It's the rebound. It's the speaker's acting like a trampoline, and it's basically taking a slow movement down where you could push the trampoline down and then you release it automatically, and it releases it quicker than the downward motion. So speakers react the opposite reaction quickly. So you can have a bend in the speaker that goes down slow, so you can do a big frequency, a loud amplitude, by bending the speaker slowly, and it bounces back quickly. You can sort of, I won't go into what you can sort of see, but you can sort of see that. You put sand in the speaker, you see the sound bouncing. And if you really understand how the speaker's working, it's a magnet pulling the speaker down on high amplitudes. How would that make sense? How would that get stuff bouncing up? So the only way it can be bouncing up is what the magnet's really doing is relying on the tension, and it's exactly an inverse relationship. So it's the rebound tension that's creating the faster than sound movement that's creating the actual sound. Anyway, so the obnoxious and arrogant little trolly dumbly scum says sound is created by changes in air pressure. Well, it's not created by those. It's created by movement, dumbass. It is the properties of specific media. No, that's a medium, not a media, which determine the rate at which sound travels. So yes, it's the density of the medium, idiot. When an action exceeds the speed of sound in a given fluid medium, the sound waves get bunched up together, creating a sonic boom. No, the bunching up isn't the boom. The boom is created because the sound goes through the bunching. That's the boom part. Okay, the boom is the pressure builds up and then it explodes outward, okay, because that's where it breaks the tension of the medium. Ugh, idiot. So it's all about mass. The bigger your mass, the louder the boom. So little hairs or little roughnesses on your vocal cords are vibrating very quickly, but they're very small. So they're very small little sonic booms. The rustling of your hair. There's little shards on your hair, and they scrape against each other, and the little flecks are like your fingernail. They're flicking. So it's like the fleck on your fingernail. That little, it's not the movement of my finger, it's the unevenness of the friction across it. So if you could see it in slow motion, you'd see that the two pieces of nail are creating tension, they're creating binding points, and then they're springing back. And it's the springing part that's causing the little tiny sonic booms that are creating the sound. All sound is a sonic boom. Dampening is just what happens as sound loses energy as it travels through the medium. No, we're talking about the dampening that happens before you get to that dampening, okay? The dampening that happens because of the media having dispersion issues, okay? The medium disperses the energy, so that dampens it. But before, it's like me moving the rope. If I move the rope slowly, the energy dampens through the elasticity of the rope, and there'll be no propagation of the energy across the media. Okay, it's that dampening I'm talking about, the dampening that happens before you even get across the barrier. So you're wrong, numbly numb. You're a fucking idiot. It'll be demonstrated. I'll bury you on the ash heap of history, you stinking, lousy, crappy, the mole rat that you are. I will bury you deep, 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 deep in the center of your bullshit. You fucking cunt. Fuck off. I've asked you before. Fuck off, you troll. Make a video so I can just, make fun of you at my leisure. If you want to play that game, you cunt. You lousy piece of shit. Fuck off. Go play with Piro. You're no better than a Vic. Go play with Vic. All right. So let's get to mindless models. Let's see see if the assholes are saying anything. Oh, sorry. Sorry, didn't mean to imply you were assholes. Anyway, let's see. Something relevant for interest on that instantaneous action. A bit mentioned earlier. A fellow named Bill Great. I know he's an idiot too. Fuck's sake. Rope theory? You know, you people are just so fucking idiotic. That's the Occam razor simple solution of photon. The simplest thing in the universe is actually being pulled by a gigantic rope connected to every single other photon in the universe. I mean, what the fuck? Do you really think every photon is connected to every other photon in the entire universe? Conceive light as a torquing of a two-strand rope object which interconnects atoms. No, he doesn't say it just interconnects atoms. It connects photons to electrons. It connects electrons to electrons. There's rope every fucking where. Yeah, well, there's no chance I'm sucking your dick, you know, whatever you are. So that guy can be blocked. Let's see. Who else needs blocking? I guess the rest of them are okay. All right, till next time. So let's move back to the comments then. Seems safe for now. All right, so mindless marbles. So we're back still on this Michelson-Morley experiment. So I do have the Wikipedia page open. I don't know whether it's worth screen sharing. It's really a simple thing, so I just explained it, I think. I mean, look, it's just this this L-shaped thing, okay? You have two it's whatever, cut a cardboard box diagonally, and so you have two places. It's an L or whatever. So you shoot photons one way, you shoot photons the other way. You have a mirror, half silvered, and yeah, they go through this way, they go through this way, they bounce back and forth, bounce back and forth. So it's a way of lengthening the distance that the light can bounce back and forth, because you use a couple of mirrors and you multiply it and blah, 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 and you're trying to see if there's a change in the, when you put the light back together, you split it, so to speak. You're not really splitting it, you're just saying some photons go this way, some photons go that way, and then you're meeting them back together into a collective, and you see whether they are all of the same phase now, you know, whether their frequency has changed phase, that is, their lead dog is further along or their lead dog is back, that kind of thing. So it's like if you thought of dogs running, you're seeing if the dogs take longer to go one way than the dogs took to go the other way. And if the dogs take longer to go one way, you can say, hey, there must be more snow there, right, or something, more hazard, because they're supposed to be the same distances. All right, and so this experiment would say if there's any drag in the ether. Now, if I've tried to explain, any rational theory of an ether already eliminates the possibility of drag, because everybody would be saying, how could light ever get from the universe to us, because it would just get eaten up by drag, and certainly all the plants would fall into the sun, and we couldn't have any evolution on Earth. We couldn't have any 4 billion years of evolution, you know, if there was drag, because the Earth would have fallen into the sun by now. So drag really can't be a possibility. So the only other possibility, if there's an ether, it's like a checkerboard, and things move on the squares. Okay, so the matter moves on the squares, and the light moves on the squares. The checkerboard doesn't move. The stuff moves on the squares of the checkerboard. That would be the ether. So the ether would just be little squares that can flip color. So if it turns blue, it's matter. If it's red, it's nothing. And if it's green, then it's a photon. You can make some kind of rule like that. So it's just the flipping of the little wheels in space, the little dials. But that would be the ether. That would be a representation of ether. My argument is that can't create gravity, so that doesn't work. So the more sensible thing is just to say, fuck the ether. Okay, just have a bunch of ball bearings. Much simpler. But anyway, at about 4230, the Michelson-Morley experiment isn't being done at the speeds necessary to recognize the flaw. It's too small a movement relative to the speed of light. So he's quoting me, and he says, I think I disagree. Okay, so we're having a conversation about the idiotic time dilation problem of I'm moving half the speed of light. There's a flashlight. I shoot the flashlight ahead of me. how come can the light go the speed of light ahead of me? Because then it would have to be going the speed of light plus a half, which it can't do. So it obviously can't leave the flashlight going the speed of light because I'm going half the speed of light. Michelson-Morley isn't relevant to that subject. That's what I was saying here. You can't have that conversation. The only thing Michelson-Morley was detecting for was drag. Drag isn't special relativity. So anyway, I mean, they try to drag those two subjects together, but they really don't have a goddamn thing to do with each other. Anyway, the speed of the Earth around the sun is apparently the speed of light is blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Again, it's way too slow for you to have the scenario we were describing of producing light. So the issue isn't that in Michelson-Morley, the emitter of the light, which they used a candle or some kind of oil lamp. So the oil lamp light emitter isn't moving anywhere near the speed of light. And depending on how they orient the experiment, it's either in the neutral position or in the forward position. And in those two positions, there could theoretically be a difference. So depending on which way you orient the experiment, which leg is the active leg. And let's see what this guy's up to. Mr. No Name, pretentious. Well, I think we know that can go away. Yeah, sorry, no chance, pretentious. Yeah, I'm not going to bother putting a warning, but don't come into my room if you have an idiotic name. Okay, if you can't have a screen name that's something, I mean, it can be butthole, but it really, I don't know. Well, butthole probably, no, I'm not going to let you do that. You got to have some kind of screen name that gives me some idea that you're some kind of person that's not an asshole. So if your name basically says asshole, like if in reasonable language I can put an equal sign next to your screen name and say asshole, then fuck you, don't bother showing up. Oh, Jesus, pretentious. Precious. Anyway, let's see. Okay. All right. As far as I know, people were aware of that. Okay. However, as far as I know, people were aware of that. So we're talking about a very fraction of the speed of light that the total velocity would be. But you don't know what direction that total velocity is in. So it really just doesn't, they can be compound velocities. So you can be moving in the galaxy the opposite way you happen to be moving based on the Earth's rotation. And so these speeds don't necessarily add up. They can subtract from each other. So the total speed would be less than that anyway. That's the maximum possible speed, but there could be the practical real velocity is probably much less than that. And that's conceding they're accurate about how fast the galaxy is rotating, which I don't think they have any kind of rational clue because they're basing it on their wrong theories. All right, anyway, they were looking for a particular shift of light on the screen. Well, again, they're looking for a phase shift, so let's be accurate. And this shift was calculated to be about 200 nanometers. Time doesn't have anything to do with this. Well, distance and time are fundamentally the same thing, so there's just no way. We're talking about a constant, for fuck's sake. Time has everything to do with this. And the shift is a phase shift, which is, again, a time shift, which means the light shows up later from one of the legs than the other legs. The dogs are lagging behind. And let's understand what the dogs are, right? The dogs, they're using white light in the experiment, which is not great. And I don't know why, because they can test the experiment with monochromatic red light, and I don't know why they don't use red light for the experiment, but our separated light. Well, monochromatic light wouldn't give them, well, sure, it would give them fringe. So that doesn't even make sense. I don't know why they bothered using white light. But let's understand what white light is. So every time you say, here's a white photon, well, it's not a white photon. It's actually a blue, red, and yellow or green photons. So it's at least 3 photons making a white photon. Can you really have a white photon? Do you think? Anyway, I think it's safe to assume that they knew what they were looking for. Well, you say it's safe. I'm not so sure it's safe. They even did multiple experiments, yes, and some of these people still weren't convinced by the results. So they kept doing more experiments because they kept finding little weirdnesses, you know, a 0.2 here and a 0.5 there, and they just weren't sure what this thing was saying because they didn't believe their own results. Well, like I said, their results were certainly beyond the margin of error, but they certainly still were, there still was some sort of result, which they weren't sure meant something or didn't mean something. They wanted to find a positive result, which would prove parts of your theory. No, it wouldn't. What does it have to do with my theory? How can you say something like that? They wanted to find a positive result which prove parts of your theory. Where would my theory, where have I ever stated there's ether or there'd be drag? For fuck's sake, it does exactly the opposite, you dumbass. There's nothing in my theory suggesting it's a kinetic reaction. You're saying there's friction in kinetics? No, that's the whole point of kinetics. No friction. There's no drag. Shit. Man, I'm sorry, but that's just obnoxious. To argue, I'm not defending ether. I was just making my argument. The argument I was making is you can't disprove ether with this stupid fucking experiment, because ether, okay, rationally defined, would clearly have to account for the fact that there isn't drag, for fuck's sake. So I'm just saying they're disproving a straw man. I'm saying if I could go talk to Maxwell, okay, Maxwell believed in ether. I'm fucking sure Maxwell knew there wasn't drag in the ether. Anyway, if you're not satisfied with that, people have, well, I'm not satisfied. I mean, you know, fuck you in this attitude. I'm saying, I said to you, I could have predicted the results of the fucking goddamn experiment. I'm saying to you, drag is a ludicrous concept, okay? If there was ether and it was causing drag, the universe wouldn't look the way the universe looks, for fuck's sake. It's not possible to make drag ether, okay, and have the universe we have. That's why Maxwell's ether theory isn't Einstein's bent space theory, because even Maxwell conceded he couldn't make ether work. He died trying. But Einstein can't unify his bullshit theory, and that's why he's a failure. I'm just saying both theories are wrong. Several modern experiments have been done down to an accuracy of 0.000. Okay, so again, you think they can measure these things to 14 places, which I say is crap anyway, but whatever. So it's another bold assertion by the, whatever you want to call them, the dark matter theorists. They can't properly interpret the two-slit fucking experiment, and you think they're properly interpreting these experiments with these high tolerances. No, they're contriving experiments, they're contriving devices, and they're producing results. If you think there's gravitational waves, if you think two black holes that they haven't even proven exist at all collided with, first spun around each other in some circumstance that I can't make sense in any kind of logical model. There's no way two black holes spin around each other. Can't happen. How did it happen? How did they possibly end up spinning around each other? You can't come up with a fucking rational gravitational theory for how two objects spin around each other. It just can't happen. If they come at each other from a distance, they'll end up a straight line path and crash right into each other. They can't help but hit each other unless there's something heavier around them. Okay, that's the only way you can create an orbit is to influence them with a stronger gravity. So you're saying there was something stronger gravitationally? There was like a father black hole in the area? I mean, shit, it's all bullshit, for fuck's sake. This is taking into account the fact that the Earth is slow. You think that we have found the absolute frame by now. You'd think we have found the absolute frame by now. Well, I don't know exactly how you find or you access something that requires you to be evacuated, essentially, okay, from all force. I mean, that's pretty hard to do, isn't it? If you want me to dig deeper, I can tell you can tell me, but saying that these modern experiments don't mean anything seems absurd to me. Well, I'm saying they don't prove anything reasonable. They're disproving unreasonable theories. I'm saying there's lots of reasonable theories that certainly can describe ether that's not going to have drag. So again, you're the one pigeonholing the alternative theories and saying all alternative theories are the opposite of my theory, and therefore they're disproven. If I prove one element of my theory, I've disproven all elements of their theory. That's not how it works, fuckhead. I'm saying you haven't disproven ether theories by disproving the existence of drag, and that's all this experiment proved, if it proved anything at all. And it certainly has nothing to do with the conversation we were having about the speed of light and what happens when you're traveling half the speed of light. So it has nothing to do with relativity. This stupid Michelson-Morley experiment does not prove relativity in any way whatsoever fucking ever. There's an entire Wikipedia titled Modern Searches for Lorentz Violation. Well, again, I don't have much respect for Lorentz, but I don't want to get into the mathematical convolutions. Some people are actually interested in seeing some aspects of relativity disproved. Well, I think the relativity can be disproved by the paradoxes it creates and by the fact that it is logically nonsensical. Even though these assholes keep admitting the clocks move slower, they keep thinking the clocks are moving slower because somehow the time is moving slower. And no, they're moving slower because the matter is moving slower, the metabolism of the matter. And I think their success would have been noticed. Well, I don't know. Again, I don't give a fuck about Lorentz violations. I don't give a shit about what's this stupid law of inequity or whatever the fuck it is. It's all mathematical crap. So you want to obsess with that shit, go ahead, waste your time. All right, so I'll go to the Wikipedia page. And let's see, should I bother trying to screen share this? I mean, it has a, if you go to the Michelson-Morley, there's a picture of the interferometer, and it was nice to see that they did include the extra piece of glass to compensate for the one path has more glass in it. So they did compensate for that by putting a piece of glass, just a plain piece of glass, in the path. So that was clever of them to figure that out. But the real problem is they're assuming that the reflected path, the path that reflects, that still has one element in it that's different than the other path. So there's still the fact that there's an extra reflection in that path. So they haven't compensated for the speed difference between going through something and then reflecting off something. And I think it's logical to assume there is some consumption of time in the process of reflection. Probably a minute amount, but it's there. And what we also know about reflection, I think, is that it often polarizes the light that goes through it. So the source and the light emitted wouldn't be light that's truly reflected. It's re-emitted light. And this does create some potential for what one might consider to be diffraction and misalignments and phase shifts. So that's still a problem, that in one leg of the interferometer you have a reflection that you don't have in the other leg. So it might have been worthwhile to put an extra mirror somehow. Yeah, an extra mirror. It's only one more reflection in an experiment that has a ton of mirrors in it, so it probably doesn't matter. But anyway. So what's the point I want to get to? Yeah, so but the Earth is not nearly traveling fast enough. The rotation of the Earth isn't fast enough. Whatever speeds you attempt to acquire are not fast enough to invoke any relativistic phenomenon or phenomenon related to time dilation. It's just not enough speed to be able to see it. It's just not going to be there. It's not enough of a difference to be detectable, I think, is a fact. Yeah, so what did I want to say? So there's another image of the interferometer where you just see those two legs. And the thing to remember is that the emitter and the receiver are both moving. So the path length has to be the same. So it's kind of obvious it can't possibly travel more distance. Yeah, I mean, just because the receiver is moving as fast as the target, the reflecting target. But anyway, there's no point in going into that. The whole point of the experiment, I think, is again, as pointed out, I don't think it does. It's a straw man. It's only arguing a straw man. It's not arguing anything real. Because I think the idea of a drag ether would be ludicrous. All right, so there's enough of that. It would be indefensible. And I don't think anybody was defending an ether that included drag. Anyway, I'll shit in your mouth, you jobless cunt. Well, whatever. I don't think you'll do anything but wet your pants. I mean, really, people are amazing. Amazing. All right, the path of events of the matter internally are extended. And let's see, the path of the matter is extended with the additional momentum. The path of the matter is extended with the additional momentum. It's just not true. And if lengthening a path will not cause redshift, redshift is created either at the acception of a photon or the reception of a photon. So either your receiver or your emitter has to be moving, but it has nothing to do with the distance. Because if you make it distance dependent, you can pretty quickly create the paradox where at 1 billion miles difference, if I change the distance by 1 mile, that 1 mile over 1 billion miles wouldn't mean anything. Now, if I change that to 1 mile away instead of 1 billion miles away, then an extra mile will be twice the distance. And there's no way to make redshift rational in that circumstance, because then the redshift at a 1 mile distance should be preposterously higher, because it's kind of twice as much distance than it would be in the 1 mile to 1 billion mile scenario. So there's no way to make redshift something that happens across space. It happens when the light is emitted, and it happens when the light is received. All right, no drag in ether possible since all dynamic elements within interact at exactly the same speed. Well, again, I'm not even talking about, I'm not here to defend ether theories. I'm not dependent on it. I mean, I could certainly turn it into ether, but there's no point. Ether is an unnecessary, the only reason why they came up with ether theories is because they were too stupid to understand push gravity. So if they would have just thought of push gravity, then you don't need ether. You know, it's not the path inside the matter for a revolution to occur. I don't know whether you're talking about redshift. I don't know why you're putting things in quotes either. I mean, in parentheses, so, but whatever. So I guess that's correcting yourself. I guess that's the vernacular for correcting yourself, but whatever. I'm not getting it entirely. I don't know what you're getting at, superior mind guys. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, you need to put more in your sentences here, because I don't even know what subject you're on exactly. So whatever. It's not something I can respond to. I don't know what you mean. The point of an ether is there are no dynamic elements in the sense that nothing is an element. Everything is a perturbation, a disturbance. Okay, so a disturbance isn't an element. So everything's a disturbance in the ether. But anyway, so anything else on comments? I guess not. But really, I mean, I'm not defending ether theory, and my theory certainly wouldn't suggest there's anything called drag, and you're not going to, my theory would not expect there to be a positive result in the Michelson-Morley experiment. It would predict that the two paths are the same length, and the light will take exactly the same amount of time to get across the two paths, and you're not going to be able to ever change that. I mean, even, by Einstein's stupid theory, of gravity, bending light. Well, if gravity can bend light, why the fuck can't it slow light down? So you almost have to argue that doesn't make much sense, frankly. I don't think it makes much sense. It certainly doesn't make much sense to the physicists who talk about light not escaping black holes and that kind of nonsense. Because clearly there's no evidence that light is slowed down by gravity. But I don't know how you can bend what you can't slow down. That seems a little mysterious. All right. More like an equilibrium. Well, the point is the universe creates pressure. And yes, outside of the influence of anything else, if you were alone in the universe, you would have an equilibrium in the sense that there would be nothing shadowing you, okay, with any other kind of force. You would have exactly the same kind of force on one side of you as you did on the other side in the same proportions. And it's not until something else shows up that you start getting hit with stuff of different proportions. And I'll try to get to that gravity argument. Is quanta discrete particles. It doesn't matter, but yes, the whole point is that the whole universe can be understood as just ball bearings moving a direction, and just understand them as being perfectly kinetic. Okay, that is, if two of them hit each other, you really can't tell if they went straight through each other or if they bounced off each other. The end result is, who knows? Okay, it's that perfect an interaction. So it's like it never happened. So if they bounce off each other, it's like it didn't happen because it looks like they went right through each other. And that's what kinetic means. Now, if you add to that an idea of polarization, like a color, one's blue and one's red, now the question is, does the red go through the blue, or does the blue go through the red, or do the two colors bounce off? So that's the catch. So my argument is, it doesn't matter. That's what's being exchanged. So in this perfect kinetic atmosphere, what's really being exchanged isn't direction, but it's ownership by polarization. So collections of polarization are what is being collected, not actual momentum. But yes, quanta would be discrete particles. Two quanta make a photon. That creates a frequency. All right, anyway, two as a minimum. To have a photon, you have to have a minimum of two quanta. Now, frankly, to have a white photon, it seems to me you'd have to have a minimum of 6 quanta, because you'd have to have 2 reds and 2 blues and 2 greens. Anyway, let's see. Ether is the 5th state of matter, not a thing. Well, again, there is no ether, so fuck you, you're an idiot if you believe that crap. But anyway, yeah, quanta is discrete causal directing element. 5th state of matter. I mean, it's just so stupid. Let's see, this chat has capsized, so you can't type much. I don't know what that means. Do you think the experiment is relevant? I really do think the experiment is relevant. To what? I'm trying to avoid talking about ether theory, just absolute frames. Well, again, it doesn't do anything about absolute frames. It's not going fast enough. If I could do the goddamn experiment at the speed, at half the speed of light, do you really think the results are going to be the same? Do you really think that if I'm moving something half the speed of fucking goddamn light, that the light is still going to be going, it's going to hit the target in the same distance? Of course not, because your fucking instrument isn't the absolute frame. And if you put your instrument in the absolute frame, you'd realize you're moving half the speed of light and therefore break Einstein's idiotic equivalency principle. There's no fucking equivalency. You'll be able to detect the fact that you're moving half the speed of fucking light. You can't do, you just can't apply this goddamn experiment to relativity. It's stupid to apply it. It doesn't have anything to fucking goddamn do with the speeds talked about in relativity. Shit. So irritating. Obviously, and how is your damn interferometer ever going to be in anything called an absolute frame? Once again, it can't. The detector and the reflectors are all in the same fucking frame. They're moving. Shit. Yeah, if there's an absolute frame, you're not going to find it with an interferometer, fuckhead. That's my point, okay? You're not going to find it with something where this mirror is connected to that mirror by a piece of metal or matter of some kind. That's not going to fucking work. Whatever. Yeah, well, don't bother doing this in this stupid chat, okay? There's no point in arguing this in the fucking chat. I mean, I think frankly, I think I'm about done with it, okay? I mean, I went to the goddamn Wikipedia page. I've explained how this has nothing to do with the effects created by high speeds, okay? The fact that matter can't even travel them in the first place, you fucking cunts. You can't create matter that can move the speed of fucking light. It can't happen. None of this crap you fucking relativists talk about, this goddamn fucking experiment of this elevator moving half the speed of light and you're bouncing your goddamn light off of the mirror. The mirror is gone. You're not bouncing your fucking light off of it because it's fucking gone, okay? It's moving half the speed of fucking light. So by the time your light gets to it, the mirror's not even fucking there, you fucking retards. I mean, it's just stupid. I'm not going to argue this crap in this chat room. It just doesn't happen that way, okay? I'm just saying, if I took Michelson-Morley experiment and I moved it faster, what do you think is going to happen to the light moving perpendicular to the movement? Do you really think the light's going to still move in a straight fucking line? No. Photon A is going to be produced here. Then photon B is going to be produced here. Then photon C is going to be produced here. Photon D is going to be produced here, in the sense that it's inverted this way when they're at the release point. So the first photon comes out here. The second photon comes out here. The third photon comes out here. The fourth photon comes back here. That isn't even a ray of light anymore. The fucking first photon isn't lined up with the last photon. You can't even detect it as fucking light anymore because it's not even coherent anymore. Fuck. They left at different locations. It's one of the rules of light. You can't have the light leave at different locations, okay? You're just not, because you idiots think a fucking photon is one continuous frequency thing, you're just not getting it. When a fucking atom or an electron emits light, it's emitting it as two elements, the beginning and the end, you could think of it as. Now, if it's in a different position when it emitted the beginning, and it's in a different position when it emits the end, you have to fucking kind of understand that that's broken then. Okay, it's not going to be a fucking photon anymore. If it doesn't emit the light from the same position, it's not going to be the same photon. So if the fucking electron that's emitting it is moving in the direction of the light, it's going to come out as it's blue shifted. And if it's moving in the opposite direction, it's going to come out red shifted. but you can't create light. The more movement you have, the less likely you're going to create something called coherent light, and especially tangential or perpendicular movement. Any light emitted perpendicularly won't be detectable because it won't be aligned anymore. It can't possibly hit the same electron. The two ends of the photon, if you want to think of it your way, my way, there's two quanta. The two quanta have to hit the same electron. If they hit different electrons, it just won't work. I don't care whether you're name calling me. I'm just saying I'm investing a bunch of time trying to explain something to you, and then you're making accusations that I'm defending ether theory, which I explicitly said I'm not doing. Then you say my theory is dependent on Michelson-Morley finding drag, which it's not. You don't think I should be irritated that I have to restate this shit over and over again? I only said it 17 times now. There's no way this fucking interferometer experiment has anything to do with the high-speed paradoxes created in Einstein's relativity. You can't demonstrate relativity with this fucking experiment. And you keep insisting you can. You can't. Yeah, well, I'm sorry if it pisses me off. Yeah, right. If we actually do manage to go at half C, would the Michelson-Morley be relevant? Well, again, what I'm saying to you is if you go half the speed of light using the Michelson-Morley experiment, you're going to find out, okay, that if your distances are still the same, that is, you're moving the receiver just as fast as you're moving the emitter, then it's going to get you the same result because there's no distance change. This whole question is about distance. You're not changing the distance with Michelson-Morley. Where's the distance change? If I move the emitter of the light at exactly the same speed as the receiver of the light, don't you understand? And the target, of course, the reflector is moving with it also. All three elements are moving the same speed. How could it possibly be relevant to the speed of the stuff being emitted? The receiver and the emitter will be doing exactly the opposite thing. So even if the emitter did redshift, the fucking receiver's gonna blue shift. I'm just saying, it's not an absolute frame. The fucking experiment isn't being conducted in the frame that includes the thing you're supposed to be detecting, which is the ether. So until you put the ether in that frame, this can't tell you anything. Well, you just said it up here. You want me to quote you? Fuck, you said it right here in this text conversation. You said something about my theory needing that this somehow would invalidate my theory. Do I really have to go back in here and find the fucking quote? Shit. Let's go find his stupid remark. Jesus Christ. I didn't. Yes, you did. All right. Do you really think it's relevant? Okay. The two mirrors speak. Well, anyway, different polarization. Identify. Okay, here. Mirror goes the same direction. Gets back quicker. No, that's not it. Let's see. Are you arguing about the area here, or are you arguing the principle here? Yeah, well, I'm arguing the principle. Just what I'm calling you. Let's see. Oh, well, it was here somewhere. Well, anyway. No, it was in your other comment. That's right. It was on the comment on the thing. So anyway, I'm not going to re-argue it. It's kind of relevant in another way. Well, I'm just saying I don't think it's relevant in any way to the paradoxes created by the idea of relativity. Things have absolute velocity. There's really either the elevators being pushed or there's gravity pushing the things down. There's real things have movement. There is no equivalency when you get to real speeds. The equivalency only exists where the where you're such a tiny percentage of the absolute speed of light, that you're not going to be able to detect the differences because there's such a small percentage of your mass. So the small percentage of your, like if I'm only moving 1 mile an hour, it's a tiny change in my matter that took place, tiny, 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 by the density of my mass. So, but the argument is, if I'm going half the speed of light, then the change is huge in terms of what has happened to my mass. It's a percentage argument. As you increase the speed, you increase the density of the virus. I don't even know how to, what to use as an analogy, but it's inversely related. So as you increase speed, you increase effect proportionally. So it's almost negligible effect at the slowest speeds, and it's a complete effect at the most speed. You have no dimensional mass in 2 dimensions when you're going the speed of light. You've lost all your mass in 2 dimensions. I mean, it's a significant change, and there's nothing parallel to that at slow speeds. Well, look, the argument I made is clear, okay? The ether theory is not debunked by Michelson-Morley. The straw man of the ether theory is debunked by it. So I'm just going to keep saying that. It proves nothing meaningful. I mean, it's just totally, I didn't need Michelson-Morley to understand that an ether theory would be like a checkerboard, and that unless you increase distance somewhere, you're not going to change the force dynamic. So there's no, like I said, there's no, unless you make the checkerboard. I mean, look, the guy did it in the video. He was talking about, when they do their stuff, they talk about the fact that the field doesn't move. And then when they talk about somebody else's stuff, they're talking about wind and sound. So they're talking about the field being blown around by wind. So it's just a convenient kind of bullshit. So when they're talking about their theory, the absolute frame is immutable. You can't move it. And yet when they're talking about somebody else's theory, all of a sudden there's wind blowing all over the place and your checkerboard is flying all over the fucking place. I'm just saying it's a double standard. It's hypocrisy and it's duplicity to say you've proven something when you've only proven, like I said, all you've done is debunked the pigeonhole you shoved somebody else into. All right, anyway. Sorry, gravity. All right. So this is where this is the part that's going to make this really all understandable in the technical sense. So now we're getting into the real technical bits. Now the real point is that the absolute truth is it's a push force. So the quanta is energized. If I created such a reality where I made a bunch of random BBs and they all had a momentum of 50 miles an hour, and I put them in a box where they can't escape, I can think you can understand that if I put 2 bigger objects in that field, that the BBs will push them together. That the random motion of the BBs will inevitably force those 2 things together. Now that's the concept of things moving in straight lines, and straight line force will inevitably push things together because the shadows will be created. There'll be no way for the pressure to go around the corners. So the pressure won't fill in between them. It won't push them apart. It won't do any of that. The straight line force dynamics will always mean that the outside, okay, has more pressure than the inside. So anything that has an outside and an inside is going to have more pressure from the field on the outside than on the inside. Okay. So that's just a rebound thing. That's a push force. And that analogy gives you hard mechanics. Now, obviously, what we're talking about can't be done that way because there's all kinds of problems in terms of Let's see how to state the problems. It was sort of the kinetic thing. You have to explain how something could move through that random field without having the consequence of, as it moves, it'll bang into more BBs in front of it than behind it, and that creates friction. So that would be drag. So the BB field ends up being like an ether field in the sense that it's a moving field, ends up being a drag field. Now, I get around that by simply explaining that it's kinetic, so there is no drag. But once you make it all kinetic, then there's also no change. Because as I've stated, the head-on collision looks just like the complete miss. The complete miss, head-on collision, the universe looks exactly the same. So there would be no opportunity for change. So now enter what we'll call polarization. You might only need to do this in the sense of if you could draw this model in 3 dimensions, if you can understand it in 3 dimensions, it just might mean the 3-dimensional position. So there could be only 2 kinds of polarization. You're moving forward this way, or you're moving forward this way. So you're a frisbee, and you can do this or you can do this. And for the sake of argument, let's just eliminate everything else because I think it's unnecessary. If it really exists, it would all add and subtract. Okay, I mean, this would balance that and this would balance that. So you could just cross everything over and just balance it all out. So for the sake of just understanding what goes in and what comes out, you could just reduce it to 2 states, this versus this, and then you just have what dimension you're moving in, what direction you're going, and what becomes the 2 other directions. And so you'd have 6 kinds of polarization, meaning if you're going this way, you can be, if you're going left, you can be this way or this way. If you're going right, you can be this way or this way. So at all 6 locations, you have 2 choices. So I guess you could say 12 orientations total. So let's just say the field has those 12 orientations in it. So they're random. So let's just call them 12 colors. So the biggest field, the absolute frame, has 12 colors of BB in it. All right. Now, we're not going to talk about how matter was made, but we're saying, okay, there's a piece of matter. The piece of matter does something interesting in the sense that what comes in one way, okay, when there's a perpendicular interaction, 2 things hit each other, 2 BBs hit each other inside the matter, 2 quanta. So it's constantly, the force is constantly going inside of the matter, and it's constantly going out. So it's nothing actually stays in the matter. It's constantly changing. So the matter is part of the stream. It's just going to lag behind. It's just going to be able to filter the stream as it goes through it. So the matter will be able to stay and let the stream flow through it. But and stream isn't a good analogy because obviously the stream is flowing from all directions. Okay, like in the Stanford lecture, convergence kind of scenario. So from all directions, it's converging, but it's also being expelled again. So that's the conservation. As the gravity goes in, the gravity still comes out all the time. It's never held, it's never kept. But what it's doing is exchanging that color. So we have 12 colors. And as it goes through, it changes color. So if a blue comes in from this side, it has a tendency to come out red. And if it goes in red from this side, it has a tendency to come out blue. So the interactions are like always so the head-on collisions, the color goes straight through. The perpendicular collisions, this thing's color goes that way, and this thing's color goes down. Okay, so that's how you end up with the tangential, the perpendicular force dynamic. So that explains magnetism and electricity, is that the the polarization is converted out of the sides of the accelerating body. So as it accelerates, what it's doing is absorbing one color and emitting it another color. So if you have two bodies in gravity, this piece of paper does have a plain side, so I guess I can use it. So I'll try to draw a picture of it. So you have these two bodies in the field. Now, and understand that the force is coming from all directions. I'm just going to show it from the relevant directions. All right, but you got to understand it's coming from all directions. All directions. All right, and it's all random color. So just imagine there's 12 colors coming in from both sides of force. The matter is made of, let's say, the 12 colors also as filters. So what comes in red hits a blue, blah, 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 blah. You get the thing. So what comes out, if the thing doesn't accelerate, exactly the same colors go through as come out. They're all converted, but they're converted proportionally. So there's still just as many blue, green, yellow, red, pink, purple, whatever the colors would be. The same ones are going to end up coming out. Now, if it accelerates, that is, it absorbs polarization, then the color changes in the sense that a blue will go in, and the key thing is it will expel from the perpendicular a red. So now it's going to release some color one way and keep the color this way. So now what comes through the other side is now going to be changed from what it would have been. The random mix is now going to be decidedly more of one color. So instead of being, so all I'm trying to get you to understand is instead of it being like 6 blue, 6 red, 6 yellow, it's now going to be 5 blue, 5 red, 7 yellow. And that the difference is going to come out this side, okay, as blue and red. So it's going to expel what it converted. It's going to, and this part will, as a byproduct of the acceleration, it's getting rid of a color not consistent with this. So let's just say this was yellow. And so it's keeping yellows. And so it converted, it let go of reds, it kept yellows, and it expelled more, the opposite of yellow or whatever, blue. All right, so now it's not the same proportions. So now you can say, so now it has, let's say it has 5 yellows, 5 reds, and 7 blues. Now it's coming at this other object. So this force on one side now has the same number, okay, 5, 5, and 7. So this side has 19, okay, except it has the even number. So it has 6, 6, and 6. So let's say there's 18. So 6, 6, and 6. So it's all even. And the force coming in has 5, 5, and 7. 8. Okay, 5, 5, and 8. So that's the key to this, because then you can sort of understand that the thing that has 8 is going to be the weaker force, because it's not going to have as many things in here to interact with. So when the 5 thing comes in, then let's say there's 500 that it can interact with. The 5 to 500, 8 to 500, you can see the relationship is different. And what will happen is the one that has 8 is going to run out of things to hit sooner than the thing that only has 5. So the 5 can't use up the matter as quickly as the 8 will use up the available exchanges. So we're talking about the exchanges that create acceleration. So there's less opportunity for the force that has the disproportion in it to actually hit matter in proportion to its greater volume. So now the total force will seem like less force because you have imbalanced it. So you could sort of think that if I made it all red force, that there would be a lot of waste because this thing that would have hit a red, that already got hit. You get it? So the stuff it could hit already got hit by one of the other bullets ahead of it. And so it starts to run out of targets to hit, if you get my drift. Okay, so as the elements come through, there's less targets to hit because I've already hit so many of them. Where I could hit a target easier if it wasn't a bunch of bullets that already hit the target. So if you kind of think of it as targets getting knocked down, the more bullets I shoot that hit those targets, the fewer targets that are already hit, and the less likely those last bullets will find a target. And so the total force is now going to seem like it's less because you filtered it into one kind of force that's only hitting one color to create acceleration. So now the force, the weight of this side, the force is going to be stronger because this one's still balanced. So it still has more targets because it's not discriminating. It's not saying I can't hit a blue target. It's not saying I can't hit a green target. Where the force on this side is basically saying I can only hit green targets or I can only hit blue targets. So it has less matter to hit. So the more one color I make the force coming out, there's less targets in the matter it can hit. That's probably the best way to say it, right? Only green arrows can only hit green targets. I could say it that way. But if I have random arrows, all the colors, then there's lots of targets to hit. If I only have red arrows, I can only hit red targets. I have 1/18 of the number of targets to hit. So I'm less likely to hit a target as the force goes through. So now you can understand why this feels more force from the outside than from the inside and moves in the direction of the greater number of hits. So now more matter is getting hit out from the outside than matter gets hit from the inside because these arrows are discriminating and these arrows aren't. Okay, I think if somebody listened to that like 3 times, they could get what I'm saying. But that's the key to it right there. So no need for this to actually absorb velocity. All it's really doing is absorbing color. It's absorbing, it's changing its color to a its balance of color. And that is the same thing if it does that with going in one direction. So color means a direction, kind of. All right, so that's the first step of it. But this gives you the understanding of what's happening in magnetism, the sneaky part, okay, is that magnetism isn't just converting, from a random field to one color. So it's not just changing blue arrows to red arrows. It's changing any color arrow coming in this side, and they all come out red, or they all come out blue, and that's it. And the matter is either blue or all red. So in the case of the red side of the magnet producing entirely red arrows facing another red, you get that the red arrows can't hit red targets. I mean, they can hit red targets. So the red arrows have lots of targets to hit because the entire matter is made of red. And so the force is strong and it pushes the two magnets apart. And if it's the opposite, in the sense that we reverse the mirror, then it's all blue, which means I have all red arrows coming out. The matter's blue. I can't hit any of it with my red arrows. So the external force is incredibly strong because there's no force here. So magnetism just polarizes all of the gravity, where gravity only changes the polarization of one orientation. So it has to be coming in, each electron only changes one orientation and it ends up being randomized. And so it's not, it can't magnify the force, but it does create imbalance in the sense that filtering, de-randomizing creates less effective target acquisition. Less effective target acquisition. Well, I really think, like I say, if somebody does listen to that twice, they'll get it. But we'll try to make a regular video explaining it. But that's how a purely kinetic, nothing changes universe changes. Is that it's just changing polarization, and it's only doing it on the tangential collisions. So when a BB is going this way and one's going this way, it's those collisions where this blue one ends up going this way and this red one ends up going that way. And it's that change that is the entire illusion of material form. There's nothing different between the matter and the space. There's the same amount of energy in the space as there is in the matter. The difference is this energy, this quanta, is all polarized, and that stuff is random. And when you polarize the random stuff, you end up with force, and that force acts just like matter when it interacts with matter. Get it? That force becomes substantive to the matter because it's polarized like the matter, the arrow target thing. They gain relevance to each other again in the sense that they will cause change. They'll cause this to happen. Okay. This happening is essentially the same as this, and then this one hits one going this way and goes that way. See? This right angle, all it needs is two right angles to create a reflection. Two right angles, reflection. So you can do almost anything once you create that right angle. And again, I will reiterate that a polarizing filter, let's remember, okay, if I make a polarizing filter for light, straight lines, that this is only a quarter turn. So a 90-degree turn creates the opposite filter. So if I'm a frisbee, right, this is the opposite of this. This is not an opposite. This is the opposite. So the quarter turn is the opposite. And that's what gives this whole thing away. That's what ties what I just said about gravity to polarization. And that ties it to the fact that EMF, electromagnetic field fluxes, are created perpendicular to the acceleration of a charge. So perpendicular to its motion, its acceleration, not its velocity, but its acceleration, its gaining of speed, which is, that's when it's converting. That's when it's changing one of the fish from going some other way, that way, to one going this way. That's what acceleration is. All right. I think that did that. I'm pleased with that. Let's see. Does the postulate of absorb generally say that the Holocaust done by gas chamber? Oh, what the hell are you doing this for? Say there was a Holocaust done by gas chamber. You want to argue the Holocaust? I mean, okay, it's all right. If you think 6 million people were gassed to death, go ahead and believe it. I don't think that happened, but fine, go ahead and believe it. Whatever. You want to call me a Holocaust denier because I don't think, as a practical fact, that's how 6 million Jews died. That's not how it happened. But whatever. Okay. Fuck you. Again, I wish there was some way to just tell you to fuck off, but you just won't do that, will you? So, again, I plan on burying you on the ash heap of history, and hopefully we'll be able to find out who you are eventually, and so I can humiliate you in person in some way. You fucker, you anonymous fucking cunt. All right, let's see. Let's see. So it's irrelevant another way. I mean to say something like, but I tried to avoid either. Okay, same speed, average, the same rate interaction due to equal distribution. Yeah, okay, so I don't know what you're saying. Let's just do this. I'm sorry. I mean, if you don't have enough room to type a bigger comment or something, I guess there's just no point. Because I don't know what you're talking about. Oppositional and cooperative. What the hell is that? I don't know what that means. This is a what happens with the smallest components inside the matter. No, it isn't. Well, I don't know. Cooperative? There's no cooperative. I don't know what that even means. So, fuck that. No, it's magnetism. There's no strong, weak. It's all one force. And obviously, the force is all or nothing. There's no such thing as weak gravity. If you happen to be the electron, the quanta in the electron that gets hit by the gravity, okay? The little gravity photon hits you, it's not weak. If a light photon, if it actually hits you and you're an electron, you're the electron who gets hit, it's not weak from your perspective. It's one hell of a fucking impact. You just got nuked from the electron's perspective. So to say it's a weak force is kind of silly. Obviously, it's a strong force when you are the electron. So obviously, if you really think about the force in terms of a particulate force, and all force is particulate, then you understand that even a weak force, that there's no such thing as a weak or strong force. There's either a lot of force or a little force, but there's no such thing as strong and weak. All right, enough of that. I mean, it's either, like I said, if you're a blue target and you can only get hit by a blue arrow, you understand that a field full of red arrows just isn't going to scare you any. So yeah, that's a weak force. But throw some blue arrows in it, and then it becomes a stronger force. And make all the arrows blue, and then the force is strong as fuck. But it's all just arrows. We're just talking about the fact that whether the arrow can hit you, that you're weak to it, that you're vulnerable to it. So it's not about the force. It's about whether the thing, the target, is accessible. So it's just about what you're accessible to that is more significant. I guess is a better way to say it. All right. Well, I think I did my job here, pretty much. I mean, I don't want to get into further detail until I make this solid. Once I get people to understand what I just said about the difference between randomized and specific, and the fact that if I could probably do it with like rock sizes, like if you understood this to be different size rocks, and then you understood there's only a certain number of holes for the rocks to hit. You know what I mean? So, and if I throw all one kind of rock, I'll fill all the holes that catch that size rock quickly, and I won't have any holes to hit. I won't be able to fill any holes because I've used them up. It's probably not the best way to say it. The phenomenon sort of parallels the atmospheric situation where the ultraviolet light comes into the atmosphere and it basically metabolizes all of the ions in the atmosphere, and then it runs out of ions and it just can't do anymore. It used up all the available ions for metabolizing, and then you end up with the red color you see in the atmosphere, because it can't make the blue. That's a poor description, but that's how the atmosphere changes. The sky changes color based on the metabolism of the ultraviolet light. Right, I think that's it. Metabolizing the available ions in the atmosphere. Yeah. So let's see. Do I need to go on anything else here? I don't think so. Yeah, we got to find participants someday. You have to get people in this room who can talk and argue. Defenders of conventional physics, not. I mean, the problem is, I suppose you end up with somebody who does the. Well, I don't mind arguing with the electric theory, electric universe people, because, like I said, I don't think their explanation provides any coherent physics. I mean, it doesn't explain anything physical. It just talks in magical terms of attraction or repulsion, but it doesn't explain how something moves. And without doing that, you're not really doing physics. I mean, saying something moves isn't physics. Explaining how it moves, that's physics. All right, so yeah, I won't just sit here and smoke. So, like I said, I feel okay about this. Yeah, if I did my job. So I just had to come up with better analogies for how significant this thing is about this polarization thing. From random to filtered, and how the filtered thing is actually becomes the weaker force. All right, so till next time and such.